Welcome back, everyone. I'm Julia, your host of the Mentorship podcast, a series that features diverse industry professionals. We mentor you by highlighting different fields and going through our guests' academic and career path, from high school to their current role. In today's episode, we are joined by Maria Papadakis, a proud sport media alum from Toronto Metropolitan University. Maria is currently a digital audio producer and talent at Kiss 92.5, where she works with the iconic Roz and Mocha Show. In this conversation, Maria shares her inspiring journey to pursuing her dream career in media and entertainment. From high school aspirations to undergrad internships, a remarkable 7-year career with Toronto FC, and her current success in the fast-paced world of radio. So now, here to mentor you, it is Maria Papadakis. Welcome, Maria, to the Mentorship podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. How are you feeling?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here. Thanks so much for asking me to come on. This is so exciting, and I can't wait to dive in.
Yeah, I'm so happy you're here. We've had somebody who's had a similar educational background to you on the podcast before. Her name's Sarah Jenkins.
Yes.
You know her because you were in the same years as her.
Yeah. Sarah and I, we spent 4 years together, and it's a small program, the sport media program at TMU. It was great. I think there was like 80 of us, so we all became like a little family when we were there, and it was nice. Sarah's a great person, and she's done very well for herself.
I'm happy to have you on because even though you had the same program and at the same school, you can really see how many different career options and even internships and how you can diversify your experience because the both of you have had such different paths. So it's great to have you on to give more insight to our audience. And I can't wait to get into it.
Me too.
Well, I'll start right from the beginning to really get to know you.
Yes.
My first question for you is, what did you want to be when you grew up, and what kind of things interested you when you were younger?
Okay, if you asked like 6-year-old me, for some reason I wanted to be a nurse.
Okay.
I don't do well with blood. I don't know where I thought that was going. But then as I started to really get to know who I was at such a young age, I'd say around like 8 or 9, I knew I wanted to be in like entertainment. I knew I wanted to be in TV or live on stage. I had a really big background of, I was singing, I was dancing, I was performing, I was competing, I was in musicals. I had all of that background. And for me, I loved that. And then my parents started putting me into commercials and TV. So I did a whole bunch of that at a young age, and that's what really sparked like, okay, like this is where I think I need to be, this is where I want to be. I really enjoy being in this media center.
Yeah.
And then, as I grew up, I fell in love with sports. I fell in love with soccer, played it my entire life. And then, there was Sports Center was always on in my house. And this is like, I remember this moment like clear as day. And through high school, I was working at Rogers TV back in the day when it was still a thing.
Did you do a co-op there?
No, I didn't do a co-op. They actually hired me on as back then they were volunteer reporters. So I was in high school. And I was working for the show called York Region Living. Okay. And I was going from like choir practice to working in New York Region Living and then going home and then going back to high school the next morning. So it was always about the grind from back then. But I remember doing that and then watching Sports Center and being like, I want to do what they're doing. How can I get there? And I remember it was like a mission of mine to find a program or something that was going to lead me into that direction. And my mom and my dad were like, well, why can't you do that? Let's find something. So my parents were really big advocates to help me kind of find that path. And then, so I just kind of knew I was always in the media realm. I just didn't know where I would end up. And as you go through school and you go through life, you tap into different areas of media, whether it's radio, it's TV, whether it's producing, directing, whatever that is. I've put my feet in every water there. And you just kind of fall in love with a certain path, but it can always change. Yes. And that's what I love about this industry is you can continuously keep evolving. Right?
Especially with media too, right?
Yeah.
Especially back then. I'm interested too, when you were, in your preteen era or teenage era, watching Sports Center, as you said, or Sportsnet, did you ever feel conflicted about the fact that at that time it was really male dominated? Because I know things have changed. Did that ever make you feel a certain way, like you can't pursue this industry? How did you find your motivation through that?
I will give my parents credit for this because they always taught me to never fear any male-dominated industry when it came to sports. Like, you're always what you want to make yourself. And whatever, like, there were a whole bunch of guys, but I knew that if I put my mind to it, I could be in that same position. I never used or I never thought there was fear behind being in a male-dominated industry. I actually took that as a challenge.
Right.
I took that as something to motivate me. Like, okay, if this is how hard it's going to be, let's do it. Let's try and get there. So I never really had a fear. I definitely felt the hoops that I had to jump through, especially when it came to when I joined TFC and all that. You know, it's when you get hired at a young age and you're a female, you're going to have all kinds of things said or commented on your videos and stuff, but you kind of just have to put the blinders on and forget all the background noise because you know what you're doing is right and you're there for a reason.
Yeah, especially because in some cases in the job force, you know, you could be taken less seriously.
Yeah.
But as a child, it could be seen as, if you don't see women there, even subconsciously, you might not even realize it. But all of a sudden you're saying, I don't think that's a path for me.
Yeah.
So that's
why, you know, you have to applaud the Capernesses of the world and the people who have taken those positions and have been a role model for these young people, because they were a role model for me. And that's what I hope to do, is become a role model for someone else.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's awesome that you had that support system from your family to not even really have that initial conflict.
Agreed.
So then how did you end up coming about the sport media program at TMU?
Honestly, I just started looking around online, and thank God we live in a world where there's so much technology, because we can search and find information at our fingertips. So I started looking around on all the universities, all the colleges. I'm like, where can I find something that's going to lead me into this path? And luckily, the stars aligned, but the sport media program at TMU opened up the year after, or the year I was going to be graduating into the next year. So I applied and I got in, and it was the first ever sport media class. And it was an accomplishment, I think, for every single person who got in, because to be a first to something is pretty cool and pretty unique. And the program was still evolving, and it still is evolving while we were there. And we always make jokes about being the guinea pigs of the program and all this stuff. And our professors used to always roll their eyes, and it became a running joke.
Yeah.
But it was really cool. So I honestly just went online, and then I went to the university fairs. I just took every opportunity to make sure that I had all the information that I knew before making a decision going somewhere. Because online has stuff, but the university fairs, all those things are really worth it. And I know sometimes people are like, oh, well, it's just a bunch of people and signs, but you don't realize that when you're there, you're also meeting your potential professors. And I did. And that's how I got into talking about the sport media program there too. I got to meet a bunch of our professors, and Joe Recupero was there, and all these people, and it was fantastic. And they saw how eager I was, and then they remember you when you go to apply for these programs. So especially in a niche program like that, I highly recommend that you go to places and start really putting your face forward. You know?
Talking to people, understanding what it's really about, and also not being afraid to step out and talk to people in other fields too, because you might end up finding something that combines all different passions that you might not realize. Like if you didn't know sport media existed and you were only focused on one section, you know, I think it helps so much to kind of go out of the bubble and see what else is out there too at the fairs. And
it's true.
And
even just to add to that too, when you go in, you're so young coming out of high school.
Honestly.
You think you know what you want. And I can tell you right now, going into first year, I was like, this is exactly what I want. And I'm first year until now, I'm years out of university, your mind continuously changes when you start to tap into all these different lessons and things. What you might want might be different, or it might be down the same path, but a different road down that path, you know? So I think it's good to have an open mind when applying to these types of things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've had Sarah on before, like we mentioned, and she really gave us a picture of what sport media is and the different courses that you have to take. But I do want to hear from your perspective, just the lifestyle and your experience with it, maybe what was the most impactful during your undergrad experience in terms of the sport media side.
I think my most impactful or memorable moments were working for the broadcast network that they had there
at TMU.
Yeah. It had just started, I think, a year before we got there, our program. And I found out about it, and I applied, and I was the first female to join that. And I was me and like 7 guys, and we all just got to work together and build the whole broadcast for the hockey games, basketball games. And then it evolved, and then it became a whole production. And then all these students started getting jobs, and then I became a lead, and I was able to help students who were in first year, second year, all the way until I was in fourth year. And it was so phenomenal. And I think that really molded me into a better producer, a better talent that I am now, because I was doing it so hands-on at such a young age. And that's what I really respect TMU for, is they give you the opportunity, if you want it, to grow and to learn outside of your classes.
Yeah.
And trust me, your classes are great. Go to class, do your lessons, listen, take your notes, do your exams. But the outside stuff that you do in your spare time is what also really just adds you and brings you to the next level of, okay, I can show that I'm a little bit better than this person so I can get that job, or I want to become a bit more experienced so that things become easier than me when I get into the workforce. That's what you want, and that's what TMU did, right?
Yeah. Hands-on experience does so many things for you. It teaches you what you like and what you don't like. It connects you to people that then could lead to other opportunities too. So definitely beyond the coursework. I know it's hard, especially coming from a science major myself.
I don't know how you do science.
It's so hard to add on other things besides the courses, because it can be so demanding. But that's really where you're going to grow the most, because if you're just doing the coursework, it's just individual, right? In most cases. So that's great advice. And what about internships? Did you end up pursuing any internships during your undergrad outside of the sports network or the broadcasting network that you were doing at TMU?
Yeah, so for me, I always made sure that I took as many opportunities as I could. It's just kind of how I was brought up, how I am. So I was doing a lot of volunteering. So what TMU does is they offer you, they'll like, I think it was like in a Facebook group or something, or our professors sent us emails being like, hey, volunteer opportunity to work at the David Foster Foundation to help usher our performers. I took the opportunity.
Yeah.
Helping and volunteering to work at the World Juniors. Went, applied, got it, would do it. In fourth year, you intern. However, I stopped playing soccer going into the summer of my third year university, and I was like, why should I not intern ahead if I can? I'm not going anywhere, I might as well. So I ended up applying at a bunch of MLSC internships. And I got TFC, went there, applied. The internships are only 4 months. I was there for the whole year. They pulled some strings because they really wanted me to stay, and I wanted to stay. But none of those internship hours counted for my hours.
Oh.
So then I had to get another internship.
Okay.
Which I ended up doing it at TFC as well.
Okay.
Because I had the connection. They were like, you know what, we'll honor you, but in a different department. You can't do the same department again. I said, no problem. So I went and I worked for the academy operations team. And then that's what led me into my job with TFC.
Okay. Well, even on the intern side, can you talk a little bit about what you were doing as a student there and what you were learning and how that was kind of shaping your interest into the future too?
Yeah, so I was working in media relations, and I really loved that experience because it took you out of the broadcast room, it took you out of the digital media space. You were focused on working for the team. Your life was that team. You had to make sure that you were covering them in any way possible, whether it was PR, whether it was getting sure that they're safe in their interviews, prepping them questions. You were their safe space every time anything was happening outside of the game. And I really loved that. And so I was working for Toronto FC and Toronto FC 2.
Okay.
So it was a lot of writing press releases, making sure scheduling interviews, preparing for game days, so making sure that you would, back then, now they don't do it anymore, you would print these like massive booklets of all the information you need for that game, and you'd hand them out to the media staff that was coming to the game from all the
probably
networks.
Digital now.
All digital now.
Yeah.
Now you back. They used to make jokes about me at the office because the minute I would go into the printer room, everyone's like, "Oh no, Maria's in here. We're not gonna be able to do anything for hours because I'd be printing papers on papers on papers." It was like these poor trees. But it was fun, and it was a really different experience, and I got to see how, you know, the preparation that goes behind the game is more than just reading up one document and sending it off. There's interviews, there's all those papers I told you about, is making sure the stats are right, and then post game running the summaries, sending them out to all the networks. So that was a lot of the stuff that I was doing. And then game days, making sure that after the players were done their game, escorting them to their interview and making sure that they were good all the way until the end when they walk out to their cars. So it was a different experience. I loved it. Definitely a field I would do as well. You know, things always change, so you never know. But yeah, I enjoyed that experience. But it was a lot. It was like Friday nights TFC2, Saturday TFC games.
Yeah, and then during the week, I guess, preparing. Right?
Yeah, and then school as well.
Yeah.
So it was a lot.
And so was that your first department that you were part of? And then what was the second one?
The second was the academy relations. So I was just assisting in terms of preparing the academy teams at Toronto FC to get ready for their season. So whether it was building their player cards, registering them through our system, making sure they get their photos, getting their teams rosters set up so that their coaches can look at them on paper, and making sure that all the new people were in the system. So just a lot of more like logistical stuff and planning events like our academy welcome day and their photo days, their signing days, and stuff like that.
Yeah. So for both roles, was it more logistics, where even in the first role you were kind of helping with the logistics of the media side?
Yes.
Did you ever get to be in front of the camera during that time? And was that something that you really wanted to, especially because that was, you know, your goal, right? You wanted to be in the entertainment space, front facing.
So I always expressed to everybody there that I wanted to be on TV, I wanted to be on the radio, I wanted to be in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And so there was one day I was watching some of the TFC stuff that they were doing at the time. Caroline Schved, she was the host back then. And I was like, how can I do this for the second team? So I went to my bosses and I was like, hey, I have an idea. No one is going to watch these. If they do, that's fine. I'll film them all on my own. I'll edit them on my own. I want to do some fun stuff for TFC2. Just let me get the opportunity and the experience. They were like, yeah, go ahead. Schedule it on your own time. As long as you finish your work here, we're good with it. So then I was scheduling interviews with the TFC2 guys on my own, making some fun content. And it was super fun. They got to do all these fun games. I got to play around with them. And it was just lighthearted content. And I put it up on the TFC2's YouTube. And that's where I really started, and everyone started to realize what I wanted to do was be on camera. So I just went and asked for the opportunity and presented it to them, and they said yes.
Yeah.
And it was great that they did, because they gave me the opportunity to kind of expand my wings there. And yeah, it showed. And then from there on, that's when the position opened up, and then they considered me an option for it.
That's awesome. Yeah, because sometimes I think if somebody's doing an operational role or a media role, but not in front of the camera, and that's their true passion, they might end up thinking that they might not have that opportunity. So knowing that you were able to create that for yourself, and then even compare, right, to see, is there one that I feel more passionate about, or is this truly my passion and I want to continue with that?
Exactly. I think anywhere you are, you have the ability to make an opportunity happen. And I think that's the mentality you have to have, whichever door you step through. Because it might not be presented in front of you, but if you have an idea and you want to ask and you want to make it come to life, what's the worst that can happen if you present it? No?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
It didn't work out this time.
Yeah.
On to the next.
That's awesome.
Right?
As you were wrapping up with your undergrad and you had all these experiences now under your belt, what were your plans for when you graduated from sport media at TMU?
Yeah, so the way it worked with TFC is the internship ended in December of 2016. 2017. I'm mixing up years.
Because you graduated in 2018.
Yes, I graduated in 2017 in December. I just won the MLS Cup. It was fantastic. Life was on a high. And I was, wanting to stay there, and I didn't know how. And then I was told that the position for in-game and digital was being opened. And so I asked around. I went to my director of internship at that time, and I said, hey, how can I get my resume in here? I know I'm not like the most experienced. I know I'm young. I know I still have to finish my fourth year university. I hadn't finished it. I hadn't even started it, or I had started it, but I hadn't finished it yet. So what can I do? And they were like, okay, give us your resume, put together a demo reel, whatever you have, and you can send it forward. So I put together this little demo reel of whatever experience I had, and I went through the interview process, and I got the job.
Amazing.
Which was, I give them credit because they took a risk. I was 20 years old with limited experience, but I showed them what I could do. I showed them how eager I was, and I also showed them the loyalty that I had to the club because of all the internship that I did there. And the one thing about MLSC and Toronto FC is that they really love their interns, and they really want to give them the opportunity to step out of being an intern and become a professional. And they gave me that opportunity, and I've been there for 8 years now. So
wow.
It's been crazy.
I'm so fascinated by how you were able to make yourself a standout candidate in such a competitive landscape too, because oftentimes these media positions are hard to come by, especially in Toronto, right? It's a very different landscape here. So I think that's great to know that an intern has that potential, and it's really about how they show, like you said, words like loyalty and showing your skill set there. I think is so valuable.
You really have to vocalize in your internships what you want. And I think that's where I went right, because I made sure every day that I was talking about my future and what I wanted and where I wanted to be. And I didn't just, and this is a piece of advice I've given to people before when they ask me, like, what can I do to make my internship most valuable? And I say, do more than they give you. Ask for more. If you finish your task and it's like 3 p.m. and usually, you can leave at 5, or they say when you're done, you leave early. Don't leave early. Ask to do more. Stick around. See if there's anyone in the office that needs help. When you build yourself into the organization or into the company and show people how hard you're willing to work, then they'll want to just take that step for you, right?
Yeah. And especially when you're creating new things. Like you created the series that you were doing with the second tier position, right? So I think that's awesome too. When they see you take initiative and create new things, so much will come from that because they'll remember that too. Yeah. So now that you've graduated in this time of your career path that we're discussing, can you talk a bit more about your new position in the TFC space?
Yeah, I mean, not so new anymore. I've been there for 8 years now. So digital host and in-stadium host. And that position has evolved so much over 8 years. We used to do these massive long form YouTube videos where they were like 5 minutes long. And then every year, based on how digital social media is going, they've been shortened and shortened and shortened. So
well, now with Reels and TikTok, it's like 10 seconds or 5 seconds.
Exactly. So I went from long form storytelling to getting everything out in 15 seconds on stories. And it's been a crazy journey, and I've gotten to host. I think my friends and I were trying to calculate it the other day, which I should probably go back and like find the number. But I think I've hosted over 300 games, if not more, in my time, or been there at least, and witnessed games. And it's been such an incredible ride. This role not only has shaped me into who I am, but has really made me a better overall announcer, radio host, and producer. Because when I was also working at TFC as a host, I ended up joining MLSC as a producer as well.
Okay.
And that I did after I graduated fourth year university, because I couldn't add anything more on my plate trying to finish school. So I knew I wanted to kind of tap into both markets in case one thing didn't work out for the other. And like I mentioned to you prior, MLSC loves to really, give their people opportunities to grow. And they brought me on as a producer, and I was producing videos for TFC while hosting a lot of them too.
So you were producing even the videos that you were going
Some of them, yes. Some of them, no.
Okay.
Some of the other stuff I was producing were promotional spots. Some of the stuff that was playing in stadium, whether it was videos for our docu-series, just helping out with little promotions. Yeah.
And can you talk a bit about how you were producing these videos, what you were learning, what skills you were bringing in?
Yeah. When you produce a video, you're bringing it from a storyboard all the way to it airing on TV. And what I loved about it and what I learned was really stepping out of just the norm of what a random video will look like or what a sports video will look like. What story are you telling? So it really taught me how to storytell. And what I didn't realize at the times, because, had graduated, how much work goes into producing and how much work you do with your editor. Yeah. So I was constantly sitting in these editing suites going back and forth over detail after shot after shot after detail, changing the storyline around, making sure the coloring's right, making sure all the keys and the names and the writing and the captioning there's a lot of fine detailing. It's not just slapping an edit together and sending it off. So the process of creating a video, I didn't realize was so long, because you edit it, you send it off to your editors to complete. Then you and your editor approve it, send it off to your senior producer and then the executive producer. And then they bring it back, more revisions. And the one thing about the sports industry is that you got to get it done, and you got to get it done right in a small amount of time.
It's like
so
fast
working under pressure was another thing that I learned, because it's like you got to get going. And I think now that mentality has like been so instilled in my head that anything I do, I need to get it done fast and now, you know? But I love it. It's great.
And did you like that production side? Because it's so different than being, in front of the camera too.
I do. You know what? I think being a producer, and this is a piece of advice I'll give any person who wants to become on air, become a producer first. Or at least while you're doing it. Because when you have eyes behind the camera, you're not seeing... Sorry, when you have eyes behind the camera, you're seeing the things that you're not seeing when you're on the camera.
Right.
So the visual aspect of things, the storytelling of things, when you're on camera, you're just delivering the information, you're telling the story, you're guiding the interview. But when you're behind the camera, you have to make sure you get all the shots, you get the actual storyline that you need, making sure that the edit... You're thinking of, how is this going to look in post? Did I like that take? Did I not like that take? Am I going to need something else just to fall on? Am I going to need a filler piece just in case the ending didn't like, or if they mess up and they want it cut? Because there's been times where athletes turn around or celebrities and be like, hey, you know what? I actually don't want to talk about that last question. Can you remove it? Then what are you going to have?
Yeah.
So you always need to have some cushion. And when you're on camera, you're just there to deliver, to get the questions, get the answers, and promise you have a story. And I think producing really teaches you a little bit of a different side of it.
Yeah, I agree. Even with, I feel like I can relate a lot to that with the podcast too.
Of course, yeah.
Because I have a hand in everything. So I have a hand in the editing side, in the prep side, prepping for the interview, prepping the questions, and being involved in all of that. Then when I'm here on camera, I'm able to think about all these pieces. Like, oh, I think this might not work. So now I have to have a backup. Or I think maybe I missed a section and it's going to be helpful to have that insert earlier on. So if I wasn't involved in the editing section, the post-production and the pre-production, I don't think I would be able to be as strong as an interviewer in the podcast too. Yeah. So that's great advice to be involved in.
You're doing it great too. You got your hands and your hats all on, getting ready to do everything. It's good. It's smart.
And then outside of Toronto FC, you also have experience in other areas too, starting with Rogers. How did you get involved there?
Yeah, so I knew during COVID, things kind of shut down for me. And when the team was playing in Hartford and I was here, I wasn't hosting games. And it was a very rough time because you really start to reflect on, okay, what am I going to fall back on if they come back and they say we don't need any more hosting, or we don't have budget anymore because budgets were getting cut at the time. We can't afford to keep you on as a host. We're going to do unhosted things. So that starts to go through your head and you start to prepare okay, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? Do I want to keep producing, or do I really want to explore the avenue of just being an on-air host? So as COVID ended, I was really looking into finding ways that I could broaden the horizons of what I do as an on-air host. And I kept looking for positions, and I have, all the notifications from Rogers or Bell at that time notifying me of job opportunities that would come up. And I got the job notification actually to apply for a Roz and Mocha job.
Okay.
And I applied, I went through the interview process, and I didn't get it.
Okay.
Didn't get it. And I went all the way to the end. They just said, listen, we had to go with someone else, but we really appreciate you. We'll keep in touch though. And I stayed in contact with Shem and Mocha a lot. And I just always caught up with them whenever I could, mainly Shem. Shem is a great person, really has helped me in my career. And I was just always asking questions, how can I grow? Is there anywhere I can get myself at the company? And he goes, well, you do sports, right? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, we can see if you keep finding job opportunities on the 680 or on the Sportsnet side. So then I had applied for the job at 680, and I had mentioned it to Shem saying, hey, by the way, I applied at a job at 680. I'm not sure if you can just let them know that you know who I am and I've applied at a job before. And he was like, let me see what I can do. So he just mentioned that I had applied, and everything else, his hands were out. So I had to go through the interview process with 680. I had to send in a whole bunch of demos. I had to go in and do a bunch of mock reports. And then they ended up hiring me part-time.
Okay.
So I got that job, and I was doing overnights and early mornings for sports reports.
Okay. And this is 680 News on the radio,
680
right?
News on the radio. Okay. So I was doing from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m.
Wow.
Or 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. or 5 a.m. to noon.
Okay. And you were commentating all on sports
All
related.
on sports. So anything NHL, MLS, NFL, whatever was happening at that time. And you're reporting live updates. So like you cannot just sit back and then wait for your next update. You go every 15 minutes. So it's a lot of like constantly moving forward, switching your pace, making sure that you have all the right stuff. And you're watching the game live. So if you're literally mid report and someone scores, you got to somehow now integrate that into your 15-second report. And it was crazy time, but it was awesome. And then I was there for 4 or 5 months, I believe. And then I saw another job open up for Roz and Mocha. And I was like, I'm going to apply again.
Yeah.
And I went and I applied, and it was, I think, a 5-month hiring process.
Wow.
And they finally gave me a job.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what position is that for?
So now I'm a digital audio producer there. I was hired on as that title, but they brought me on as an on-air contributor. So I've been an on-air talent on their show as well.
Nice. And I guess now you're not really commenting on sports in that area.
No, so I had to leave that to make sure that I was there full-time with Roz and Mocha, because that is a full-time job.
Yeah.
So I had to leave 680 fully, and then with TFC, because you can't have 2 full-time jobs, I had to make a decision. I took a step back from producing, and I went freelance with Toronto FC.
Okay.
So things looked a little bit different at the start of this year when I was with them, because I'm no longer doing, I was no longer traveling as a producer, no longer doing as much little things, because obviously the work that they choose is the work that they really want me there for.
Right.
And obviously the Apple TV content was scaled back based on Apple TV's requirements. So things were a little bit shaped differently this year, but still doing all of in-game and all of the Apple TV stuff, and then some spotlights here and there.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So this year has been really transformative for you then.
Yes.
A lot of transition.
It's been crazy, as I like to say, yeah.
So maybe can you talk about your current lifestyle then, how you're able to balance freelancing with TFC and then also now working with Roz and Mocha as well? Yeah,
so balancing the two can definitely be tricky some weeks and some months. There's been months where I've had 2 midweek games and 3 weekend games, and you're working a full-time job, and you're basically working Monday through Sunday. And it's a lot on the body, it's a lot on your mind, it's exhausting, but you have to love it. And I love it. And so the way I balance it is making sure that every day I try to give myself an hour of me time. Whether it's the gym, whether it's taking a nap. I don't know what it is, but it's me time for that hour. It was me chilling with a dog. You just have to find that hour.
Yeah.
And the way I balance it is I'm very communicative. So you have to let, for example, in my case, I let Roz and Mocha know these are what's happening this week. And I have this game. If it's a midweek game, by the way, I have a Wednesday night game. I might be a little tired on Thursday, but I'm going to work ahead so that I'm not worried about catching up on work when I get back from the game. For me, I'm old school. I use a calendar, like a full-blown book. And some people make fun of me for it because they're like, how old are you? Why are you walking around with a book all day long? But it's my life.
Yeah.
And the way I use it is I have to plan out my months. And I plan everything out in advance because you have to. And the more organized you are on a daily or weekly basis, it's how you're going to be able to manage it. So I just let TFC know, like, hey, if you need me for these shoots, these are the days I'm available. These are the days I'm not. If you really need me on this day, I'll make it happen, but just let me know in advance, or I can come after this time and this time.
Yeah.
So I always like to be ahead on work, even just by one day, so that I can manage everything and I'm never falling behind.
Yeah. And I think it's important too to be in environments that are supportive, right? That understand your schedule and to communicate that with them. Like you said, I think in some cases, sometimes people are afraid to say that I'm not available during this time. But if you're in that supportive environment, they're going to be accommodating, and you have to advocate for yourself if, you want to be able to pursue the things that you want to. It's
true. And honestly, just to go off that, learning the skill to say no is a really big thing you have to do eventually. Yeah. At the beginning, when you're young, when you're coming out of university, you have to be a yes man.
Yeah.
Take every opportunity you can. But then when you start to come into the industry, when you're working a full-time job and you have a commitment, that commitment is what you need to be focused on. And you can't do everything. And what I mean by saying no is sometimes saying no to a job, sometimes saying no to a night out, sometimes saying no to a dinner, or any of that. It's making sure that you are going to be okay to do the stuff that you're required and getting paid to do.
Yeah. And, we're all learning and things take time.
Yeah. Trust me, I'm still learning. Yeah. I'm not perfect. Yeah. You know, there's still things I learn every day.
100%. Yeah. And it is so hard to do everything at once, but you're going to learn how to prioritize too.
Yeah. It's a skill that you do learn. Trust me, I still have people being like, Maria, have you taken any time for yourself this week? And I'm like, I'm fine. Yeah. I'm great. It's been a busy week. But you're going to have weeks like that too, where you're on fumes. Like there was a couple weeks ago, I had worked TIFF when TIFF was in Toronto. And I was staying downtown Monday to Thursday, working carpets every night. And the carpet started at 8:40. I wake up at 3 because I got to be at the office by 4:45.
Yeah. Wow.
And you're working those late hours and you have to come back from the carpets, you got to edit it and then be on the show the next morning and then do it all over again.
Wow.
And then I had a TFC game that same weekend and I had a wedding and I literally was like running on fumes. But I was like, this week is going to be that, but the next week, how am I going to scale it back to make sure that I don't burn out?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that our entire generation, I think our entire world right now forgets a little bit that burnout is so real.
Yeah.
And that you can't do everything, even though I know you want to, but you have to remember that you can't do anything if you are burnt out. So you have to find a balance in life and a balance in work and a balance in social life.
Yeah. And I'm glad you're talking about that too, because it does sound so awesome to be able to do these different positions and you're pursuing your dreams, but you know, you're saying that burnout can happen. So being able to be cognizant of that and preparing for it and knowing how to balance so that it doesn't happen, I think that's really important too to bring in, because sometimes this industry can be very high pressure, right?
Yeah, very demanding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And learning how to balance that is going to also be a part of this career. It's not just doing the tasks, it's also prioritizing yourself too.
You, like you mentioned, that you have to advocate for yourself because unfortunately in this world, no one will.
So let's get into your current role as digital audio producer at Kiss FM, the Roz and Mocha Show. So love to hear more about what you're doing there and what a typical day looks like.
Yeah, so typical day, I get up really early. I'm about 3 a.m. every day. I'm in the studio by 4:45, 5 a.m. Our show starts at 6. So I have an hour to do all of my pre-prep work that I haven't done if I haven't done anything the night before. So usually what I do in the morning is I have to come in, and because our show broadcasts in different markets across Canada, I do our Winnipeg news and weather. So I come in, I record that, edit it, send it out. And then I also do our entertainment updates that go on Google and YouTube. And so I come in, I record those, write them up, record them, send them out. So it's just a matter of doing all that prep work and then getting my notes together, whether it's our news articles, just making sure that if I have anything to send to the guys, I have it edited and produced and sent to them. And then I begin editing our social videos that have to come out throughout the week. We have certain requirements. We have Red Tag sponsor, so Red Tag videos come out once a week. And then I'm in charge of making sure that our socials are good. We put out stories, we film TikToks, we have reels. That's what I really focus on throughout the show. So while I'm also editing all of those on the show, during the breaks that we're on air, I'm noting everything.
Okay.
Because we create rundown sheets, and then the rundown sheets get produced into our show that is called Reloaded, that happens on the weekends. And then those shows also get produced into a podcast. And certain nights, certain days of the week, we record a show called Retro, where it's myself, Shem, and Maury, and those are like a throwback podcast where we talk about old memories from the show, because Roz and Mocha have been on for 15 years. So very, very established show. And then, I think that's basically it. And then we have show meetings, and that's it.
That's awesome. And how do you feel now working in radio? Because that's so different than what you're doing before and what you still continue to do with TFC. What has radio shown you, and what passions and interests are stemming from that as well?
What radio showed me is that you have to tell a story without no one seeing you.
Okay.
And so you have to be so detailed in what you say when you're on the radio, because when you're explaining, if I'm explaining a story to you, I could just be like, okay, and they were here, and then like that's how far I was from him, and yada, yada, yada. Whereas if you don't see me, you're trying to paint the picture in your head. So you're really trying to tell the story as if someone's almost reading a book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's up to everyone's interpretation. So learning to tell the story without seeing someone was a skill that I really learned while being there. Also, we produce our radio show by blocks. So you have to make sure that you're always working like a day ahead. So it's constantly thinking of, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? Or what am I going to come with for the show today? So that's also taught me to constantly be thinking about what could be a topic of discussion. So even if I'm out with my friends, sometimes I'll click record and just record something that funny is happening, and then I'll cut it and we'll talk about it the next day on the show.
Right.
So it's using just relatable events that also happen in your lives that people want to hear, and sometimes you don't think about that. Like, if I'm out, before I joined the show, if I was out with my friends, I didn't think that anybody would care to hear what we were talking about. But now people actually love to hear what we have to say because they can relate to it.
Yes.
So I love that aspect of radio. I love the candidness of radio. And the guys I work for are just so funny, and they're great people, and they've been in the industry for so long, and every day I'm learning something from them, whether it's learning how to navigate red carpets like I was on TIFF, or learning how to navigate an interview with a certain celebrity, or being out on a shoot for a radio spot. You know, it's very different than working in TV and in sports in general. So, and they're great at giving advice.
And what about now too? With Kiss FM, it seems like you're more so on topics like pop culture or lifestyle.
Yes.
Do you feel like you miss the sports aspect, or do you think the entertainment side of it is fulfilling for you?
I love the entertainment and the lifestyle spot to it because I genuinely get to talk about things that I resonate with every day in my life. And that's also one of the reasons why they brought me on the show, because there is an audience that's my age that wants someone to talk about the stuff that they're going through, or give advice, or just be able to laugh with. And I'm able to bring that. And I love that part of it because I just get to authentically be me. And I love that because even if you meet me in person and you hear me on the radio or on TV, I'm the same in front or behind the camera. And that's always how I'll be, always how I've been. And I love that I get to be there as a comfort for someone, or someone to laugh with or at. But I do the sports side. I love it so much, but I'm also just such a sports fan that it will never not be there for me.
Yeah.
Whether or not I'm with TFC for another 5 years or another year, you know, it'll always be there because I know that I can turn on the TV and be a sports fan. And you never know when you might be able to get back into it too, right? I think with media is that you could do lifestyle and you could do sports at the same time. It just depends where and what you make of it.
Yeah, and even with radio, there's so many ways that you can bring it in, or even be talking about pop culture, but be talking about somebody in sports. So it's still all connected and related in a way. So I think now this is a great place for me to ask you my last question. Which is, what are your hopes for your future career development, and what do you hope to achieve?
Wow, it's always a big question. My hopes is to continue to grow and be an overall, I would say, professional in the environment, meaning by that, being a great producer, being a great on-air host, whether it's on TV or on radio. I think the more you can become better at all those skills, the more you'll jobs and the more you'll be able to find things easier. I would like to end up on TV again, fully. I would, a dream of mine would be to have my own show, whether that's in the podcast world or that's in TV world or both. I think you never have to limit your mind to just being on TV or just doing sports or just doing radio. And I think I'm really trying to make that right now, where I can put my hands in different baskets and then make it one big, gift. And I hope that I can do that and continue to work on that. So yeah, I hope that one day I can do TV and radio at the same time and have different shows happening and be someone who's versatile in the industry. So yeah, that's kind of my goals. I don't have a specific date or anything in mind, but as long as I'm happy and I have a job and I'm able to do what I love, I think I'm living life pretty good.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Maria, for all of your insights today and for your time. I think that this is going to be such incredible knowledge for our audience interested in anything related, media, sports, and I appreciate you coming on so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such a great conversation. I could talk all day. You're great to talk to.
Thank you.
This is so much fun. So thank you, and I hope that whoever's listening or watching got some advice, and they can always reach out. Feel free to always reach out on my social media. I'm always here to open questions if you have any questions. So
that's so kind. Thank you so much, Maria, again. Thank you so much to Maria for coming on the Mentorship podcast. Her incredible career is a testament to the power of perseverance, adaptability, and passion. We hope her journey and great advice leaves you as motivated, informed, and inspired as it did for us. If you like this episode, be sure to check out our previous episode with Maria's fellow sport media alum, Sarah Jenkins, CBC sport producer and content creator. We will be back in 2 weeks with our season finale, where we will be joined by a well-known environmentalist who is also very active in the media. So be sure to tune in. In the meantime, follow us on @MentProjects on all social media platforms for more updates and mentorship resources. Thank you so much for listening.